My name is Rachel Moore. I'm 33 years old, and yesterday I drove my parents and sister to Portland International Airport for the dream vacation I spent 2 years planning and got told I wasn't going. No warning, just a bright smile from my mom and a casual wave toward my sister's suitcase. You'd think this would be the kind of thing you see in a drama series, right? Or maybe one of those TikToks where someone reveals their family's latest betrayal with receipts and petty revenge. But this wasn't a skit, it was real. It is real. And I haven't told anyone the full story, not even Tanya, my best friend who's been dropping cryptic side eyes ever since my mom tried to loop her into the aftermath. There's a moment coming, something I did that my family still doesn't know how to forgive. And I won't lie, I'm not sure I care. But before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Growing up in Bend, Oregon, we looked like the perfect family. Mom was a second-grade teacher who made Pinterest-worthy lunches. Dad ran a mechanic shop and taught me how to change my own oil before I could legally drive. And Alyssa, my sister, was the wild card. Popular, loud, always in some kind of gentle trouble that never seemed to stick. I was the planner, the fixer, the responsible one. You know that one child in every family who acts like a third parent, even if they never asked for the job? That was me. When I got my first big promotion at 28, I didn't buy a new car or splurge on shoes. I opened a savings account labeled Scotland. I'd overheard my mom once say that if she could go anywhere, she'd ride a train through the Highlands and eat shepherd's pie in a little village. It became my mission. I worked weekends, cashed out vacation days instead of taking them. Every reservation, from flights to a private castle tour, was booked under my name. And last week, I told them it was finally happening. Their reaction was perfect. Happy tears, group hug, even Alyssa seemed excited, though she never asked a single detail. So yesterday morning, I was up at 5 a.m., my suitcase packed, latte in hand, car gassed up and humming in the driveway. At 6:02 a.m., my mom stepped onto the porch with her roller bag and said, "You're late." I laughed. "By 2 minutes?" I got out of the car to help her, and that's when Alyssa came out, dragging her own suitcase. My stomach dropped. Mom looked too cheerful, Alyssa too smug. "Oh, Rachel," Mom said, brushing invisible lint off her sleeve. "We decided Alyssa should come instead of you. She's been so stressed lately with everything." I laughed, thinking it was a joke. But Mom kept smiling. Alyssa tossed me a fake, grateful, "Thanks, sis." I blinked at them. Instead of me? My mom waved it off. "You work so hard, you can take another trip later." I paid for this. I planned everything. But my mom was already walking toward the car. Alyssa tossed her duffel in the back seat. I stood there, ice creeping into my chest, as my dad came out last. He avoided my eyes, handed me his suitcase. "Morning, kiddo." No explanation, no defense. They just moved on. And I smiled, tight-lipped, hands shaking. Then I popped the trunk and said, "Let's get going." I drove them to the airport, and something inside me started to shift. The drive to Portland was about 2 hours, but it felt like a slow suffocation. The car was quiet at first, except for Alyssa's fake yawns and occasional, "God, I hope I didn't forget my charger," mutters. I kept my eyes on the highway. The dashboard clock glowed 6:47 a.m. I could feel Mom watching me in the rearview mirror, like she was waiting for me to say something, maybe cry, maybe fight. But I didn't, because somewhere between their driveway and the first exit ramp, I realized this wasn't a one-off. It was a pattern. Alyssa didn't just get the trip. She got to take my place without even having to ask, and my parents handed it to her like it was a favor to me. At one point, Alyssa leaned forward and tapped my shoulder, grinning. "You're not mad, right? Like, I couldn't afford this on my own, so this is kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing." Her voice was sugary, manufactured innocence with a hint of superiority. I used to fall for it. Not anymore. I gripped the steering wheel harder. "Of course not," I said. "Enjoy the trip." I didn't even recognize my own voice. Flat, almost hollow. Mom finally jumped in. "Rachel, this means a lot to us and to Alyssa. She's had a rough year." I almost laughed. Rough? Alyssa hadn't held a job longer than 6 months. She lived in a downtown studio that our parents paid for. Rough meant getting called out at brunch or burning through her latest breakup. I planned this trip, saved for it, booked hotels so exclusive I had to call internationally to reserve. And none of that mattered, because I was always the backup daughter, the fallback plan, the solid one, the one who'd understand. At one point, my dad cleared his throat. "Thanks for driving us, Ratch, and I know this feels unusual." Unusual? I bit my cheek so hard I tasted blood. That's one way to put it. We pulled into the airport drop-off zone around 8:15. I got out, helped unload the luggage, not because I wanted to, but because habits die hard. Mom gave me a hug. Her perfume, floral and expensive, made my stomach turn. "Thank you for understanding. You're always so generous." Alyssa beamed, tugging her suitcase toward the entrance. "You're seriously the best, Ratch." The best. I stood on the curb and watched them disappear into the terminal. I didn't cry. I felt blank. All the pictures I'd imagined, Mom smiling on a cliffside in Spy, Dad trying haggis in Edinburgh, me laughing over tea with them in a cozy B&B, gone. Replaced by Alyssa posing for selfies and probably tagging me in fake appreciation posts. I climbed back into the driver's seat. My phone buzzed with a new email. Check-in reminder, Hotel Balmoral, Edinburgh. The trip was still under my account, still mine. And that's when it hit me. I didn't go home right away. I drove aimlessly for a while, stopping at a gas station outside Salem to grab a soda I didn't even drink. My fingers drummed on the steering wheel as I sat in the parking lot, letting the vending machine hum drown out the looping thoughts in my head. They really did it. They replaced me. I kept trying to rationalize it, tell myself there had to be more to the story, but there wasn't. It was as simple as it looked. I made something beautiful, and they handed it to someone else without blinking. By the time I got home, the morning light had faded into a pale, overcast gray. The house was too quiet. I walked into the kitchen, set my keys down, and stared at the worn corner of the dining table, the one I'd planned to eat breakfast at with them the morning we left. The itinerary was still magnet-clipped to the fridge. I ripped it off and stared at it. Flights, check-ins, tours, dinner reservations. Every line, every confirmation number, all under my name. That's when the idea came, not like a lightning strike, but like a slow breath after choking. I sat down at my laptop and opened the first tab, the Balmoral Hotel. My heart pounded in my ears. Cancel reservation? Click. Are you sure? The screen asked. Yes. Click. The refund hit my travel account within seconds. My fingers moved before I could even question it. I canceled the castle tour, the chauffeur pickup in Edinburgh, the afternoon tea at the Dome. Then I opened the flight upgrades. My parents and Alyssa were already on the plane, in business class, thanks to me. I couldn't undo that. But the hotels, the prepaid dinners, the excursions? Gone. One by one, the confirmation emails disappeared into a folder marked closed. I wasn't even crying. I expected anger or guilt or maybe fear, But instead, there was this strange, icy stillness. They took me out of the trip, so I took the trip away from them. Let them land in Scotland and figure it out. Let them explain to the front desk why there was no room waiting. Let them try to book last-minute hotels during festival season. Let Alyssa pay for something for once. I shut the laptop and leaned back and stared at the ceiling. I had no idea what this would mean. No plan, no next move. But for the first time in years, I wasn't just cleaning up someone else's mess. I had made a decision. Not out of pettiness, though let's be honest, the pettiness was delicious, but out of sheer exhausted clarity. I'd been carrying all of them on my back for years. It felt good to put them down. My phone buzzed as I was brushing my teeth that night. Unknown number, international code. They'd landed. Let the games begin.
The first message came in while I was towel drying my hair.
Rachel, it's Mom. We're at the hotel and they're saying the reservation's not showing up. Can you call them and sort it out? We're exhausted.
I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because for once, they were the ones stranded and confused, and I wasn't rushing to save the day. A second voicemail followed 5 minutes later.
Rachel, I don't know what's going on, but this isn't funny. The concierge said our names aren't even on file. Call me back immediately.
The buzzes stacked up like dominoes falling. 2 missed calls from Dad. 4 from Mom. 1 from Alyssa, which, let's be real, I knew would be the most fun to ignore. I let them all ring out while I finished making my tea. Peppermint, strong, soothing. Sitting cross-legged on my couch, I opened the voicemail from Alyssa first.
Rachel, this is seriously petty. We're standing here with our luggage like idiots. Fix it. I mean, come on. You can't actually be doing this. Grow up.
I paused the message halfway through and deleted it. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew the words.
You're overreacting. It's not a big deal. I didn't ask for this. You're just jealous.
I opened Mom's texts next. Call me. Now. This isn't acceptable, Rachel. Did you cancel our hotel? Please tell me this is a glitch. What are we supposed to do? I sipped my tea, feeling the burn of peppermint cut through the rising anger. You are supposed to figure it out, like I've had to for years. I'd always been the one who handled it. When Alyssa forgot rent, I loaned her cash. When Dad's car battery died during a snowstorm, I drove across town at 2 a.m. When Mom had a tech meltdown during a Zoom call, I walked her through it on my lunch break. But the second I wasn't useful, I was dismissed. Their calls kept coming. A few hours later, I finally picked up because I wanted to hear them squirm. Rachel, what did you do? The hotel says everything was canceled. I didn't flinch. That's because I canceled it. Silence. Then a hiss. Why would you do something like that? Gee, I don't know. Maybe because you replaced me on the trip I paid for. Maybe because you thought I'd just roll over like always. We thought you'd understand, she shot back. Alyssa needed it more. There it was. That line. The justification. I closed my eyes, let out a breath through my nose, and replied, "You're lucky I even drove you to the airport." Then I hung up. I turned off my phone, tossed it on the armchair like it burned. And then I did something radical. I turned on Netflix. Not for noise, not for escape, but because I wanted to. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. They were stranded in a different country, and I was finally home. In my own silence, on my own terms. They could call it sabotage, selfishness, betrayal, but what I felt was something closer to relief.
The next day, I kept my phone off until the sun dipped behind the pines outside my living room window. I watched the light shift across the hardwood floor, casting golden stripes that made everything feel too quiet, too still. I used to hate that kind of silence. Now I found myself craving it. When I finally powered my phone back on, it vibrated like it had a grudge. Voicemails, texts, missed calls, international numbers blinking at me like sirens. I didn't open them right away. I made dinner, real dinner, pan-seared salmon, roasted garlic potatoes, the kind of meal I usually reserved for when my parents visited. Not tonight. Tonight it was just for me. After I washed my plate, I finally sat down and opened the messages. There was one from Dad that caught my eye. He doesn't usually leave voicemails. Too non-confrontational. But this time, his voice was low and tight. Rach, I don't know what's going on with you. Your mom's a mess. Alyssa's in tears, and frankly, this whole thing is turning into a disaster. Can we talk? We didn't think you'd take it this far. Take it this far. As if I was the one who crossed the line. As if I didn't already spend years trying to keep this family from unraveling thread by thread. I closed my eyes and whispered aloud to the empty room. No one ever apologizes to the strong one. Strong meant silent. Strong meant compliant. Strong meant smiling when you're skipped over, nodding when you're dismissed, clapping when someone else stands in your spotlight because at least someone is being celebrated. But I wasn't doing that anymore. My mom finally got through again around 9 p.m. This time, I answered. Rachel, she said immediately, you've made your point. We're stranded. We can't afford any of the hotels here. The tours are gone. Everything is falling apart. I stayed quiet. You don't know what this has done to Alyssa. She's heartbroken. Heartbroken. That was rich. Mom, I said carefully, have you stopped once to think about what this has done to me? I'm not doing this, she snapped. We're family. You don't just abandon people like this. And there it was, the guilt button she always pushed. But this time, it didn't work. I abandoned you the second you told me I wasn't going. You expected me to pay, plan, and step aside. And now you're shocked I'm not cleaning it up? Her voice rose. You could have talked to us instead of sabotaging everything. I exhaled through my nose. I did. I planned this trip for us. That was me talking. And you replaced me. Silence. Then a sharp click. She hung up. I placed the phone down gently on the table and stared at it. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Let them rage. Let them pout. Let them sit in whatever dingy hotel they scrambled to find. This was the first time in my life I chose not to fix it. And I finally understood what people meant when they said peace isn't always quiet. It's just being done. 3 days later, they came home. I knew the moment their flight landed. Not from a notification or a text, but from the silence. That eerie absence of buzzing, blaming, guilt-tripping energy. It was like they'd gone radio silent not out of forgiveness, but fatigue. They were worn down. I sat on my front porch with a mug of black coffee and waited. I'd parked in their driveway 30 minutes earlier. No announcement, no warning, just a silent, unshakable intention to say what needed saying. The taxi rolled up around 11:20 a.m.
Alyssa was the first one out, dragging her suitcase like it personally offended her. Mom followed, hair pulled back tighter than usual, face creased with irritation. Dad looked like he hadn't slept. Probably hadn't. They spotted me and froze. "Well," Alyssa muttered, loud enough for drama, "I hope you're happy." I didn't move, just raised my coffee and took a sip. "Our trip was a disaster," Mom added, walking past a patch of dead grass she used to yell at Dad about. "We spent the whole week in cheap hotels, eating garbage food, no tours, nothing." I let the silence stretch. Let them hear their own voices echo back at them. "No one would help us," Alyssa continued, voice rising. "People looked at us like we were scammers. Do you know how humiliating that was?" "Sounds rough," I said. Alyssa's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" Mom waved her hand like she was shooing a fly. "You knew we couldn't afford what you booked. You set us up to fail." "No," I stood, setting the mug on the porch rail. "I planned a trip for us. I saved for it, booked it, structured every detail around what you said you always wanted. Then you cut me out like I was a footnote." "We didn't cut you out," Mom snapped. "We just thought Alyssa needed it more." There it was, again, needed it more. The magic phrase, the default excuse, the lifetime mantra. I stepped off the porch. "Then you should have planned it with her, paid for it with her, called hotels with her. But you didn't. You just assumed I'd still be useful even after being erased." Dad finally spoke, voice tired. "You didn't have to cancel everything, Rachel. That was harsh." "Was it?" I said, turning to him. "You stood there in the driveway and handed me your suitcase like a bellhop. You didn't even look me in the eye." "I didn't know what to say," he muttered. "You never do. That's part of the problem." Mom folded her arms. "So what? You're just cutting us off now because of one bad decision?" I shook my head. "No, because of 100 small ones you never thought I'd notice." Alyssa rolled her eyes. "God, you're so dramatic. It's just money." "No," I said, sharper than I intended. "It's never just money. It's effort, it's time, it's respect. But you wouldn't know, would you? Because you've never had to earn it. Someone's always cleaned up behind you. I'm just done being that someone." I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder. "I'm glad you're back safe, but don't expect anything else from me." I walked past them, down the steps and into the car. They didn't follow. And for once, I didn't hope they would.
The drive home was quieter than silence. It wasn't just the lack of music or traffic, it was something deeper, a stillness that had weight. I kept one hand on the wheel, the other tapping out a rhythm on my thigh, my body buzzing with the aftershock of everything I'd said, everything I hadn't said too. But the moment I stepped through my front door, I dropped the keys and sat on the floor like the weight finally caught up with me. The thing is, standing up for yourself doesn't always feel like a victory. Sometimes it just feels like being alone. And that's what I was now. Alone. No calls, no visits, no tension, but no warmth either. And that space is where the memories started to trickle in. I remembered being 12 when Alyssa crashed her bike into the neighbor's fence. I'd been grounded for not watching her better. 15 when she forgot her science project and mom made me skip practice to bring it to school. 21 when she dropped out of community college and I had to explain to Grandpa why only I was graduating. At some point, being the reliable one stopped feeling like a compliment and started feeling like a prison sentence. But I kept performing because I thought it meant love. Turns out, it just meant convenience. People like me, we don't usually throw scenes. We don't write long accusatory texts or show up drunk at Thanksgiving dinner. We just carry it until we can't. Tanya called the next afternoon. Of course she did.
"Hey," she said, voice softer than usual. "Your mom called me." Of course she had. When guilt didn't work on me, Mom always tried her second strategy, calling my friends and spinning a new version. "Poor Debbie, her daughter's become so bitter lately, we don't know what happened." "What did she say?" I asked, voice flat. "That you abandoned them overseas, that Alyssa cried every night, that your dad's blood pressure shot up." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so on brand. Tanya didn't laugh. She just said, "Maybe they should have thought about that before leaving you behind." God, I loved her for that. "Thanks," I said. It was all I could manage. Then came the pause, the one that always meant Tanya was about to say something important. "You okay?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't know," I finally whispered. "I'm tired, but it's a different kind of tired. Like I'm not carrying everyone anymore, but now I'm just carrying me, and I don't really know what that looks like yet." "That's okay," she said. "You'll figure it out, but don't let them pull you back in. You've come too far." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. She was right. I had come far, but I wasn't done. That night, I pulled out my journal, the same one I'd used to sketch out the Scotland itinerary, and flipped to a clean page. This time, I wrote something different. Not tour stops or dinner reservations. I wrote, "What do I want?" It was the first time I'd asked myself that without immediately filtering it through someone else's comfort. The page stayed blank for a few minutes. Then, slowly, I started to write. By the end of the week, I had a one-way ticket to Athens sitting in my inbox. It wasn't impulsive, not really. I'd been thinking about it for years, long before the whole Scotland mess. Greece had always felt like a distant dream. Whitewashed buildings, endless coastlines, long dinners under string lights. But it never made it to the top of the list because there was always someone else to consider. Would Dad hate the heat? Would Alyssa get bored without shopping malls? Would Mom complain about the food? I didn't have to think about any of that now. I booked the flight, reserved a small seaside guest house in Pleo, enrolled in a 3-hour Greek cooking class. I even splurged on a private tour of ancient ruins, not because someone else would enjoy it, but because I would. I packed lighter than usual, just one carry-on, no extra outfit in case Alyssa forgets hers, no Ziploc of emergency meds for Mom's allergies, just my things, my needs. It felt revolutionary. The day I left, Tanya drove me to the airport. She brought coffee, hugged me twice, and said, "I hope you fall in love. With food, with a place, with you." She meant it. The flight was long, but I didn't care. I watched bad movies, journaled between naps, stared out the window like I was watching someone else's life begin. When we landed, the sky was blinding and the air warm like a blanket. Athens was noisy, chaotic, full of people and life and smells I couldn't place, but I felt like I belonged. Not because anyone welcomed me, but because I had welcomed myself. I wandered for hours that first day. No schedule, no responsibility. I ate pistachio gelato on a marble bench, got lost in alleyways painted with vines and graffiti, bought a pair of handmade sandals from a shop that didn't even take carts. Nobody knew me. Nobody expected anything of me. And for once, I wasn't shrinking under someone else's disappointment. In Pleo, I stayed in a terracotta villa with sea views and no TV. The owner, Eleni, greeted me with lemon cake in broken English. She called me Rachel Joy. I didn't correct her.
I spent afternoons wandering stone paths, evenings sipping wine by the water. No one asked for Wi-Fi passwords. No one forgot their passport. No one cried over the wrong restaurant. It was just me, existing, breathing, choosing. And slowly, I felt my body catch up to what my mind had already decided. I don't owe anyone a version of me that's easy to take advantage of. One night, I sat on a rooftop patio under strings of golden lights. A breeze carried the smell of grilled fish and wild thyme. My journal sat open on my lap. I wrote, I deserve to be the main character in my own life. And for once, I didn't feel selfish writing that. I felt honest. Greece didn't fix me. It didn't erase the years I spent being invisible in my own story. But it gave me a starting point, a sense that maybe, just maybe, there's more ahead of me than behind. And that was enough.
I came home 2 weeks later with sand still in my shoes and olive oil stains on my favorite sundress. The kitchen smelled unfamiliar. The plants had wilted slightly. My fridge was mostly empty, except for one bottle of white wine and a note Tanya had taped to the door. Welcome back, Queen. Call me when you're ready. I didn't rush to unpack. Instead, I sat on the floor by the window with a cup of lukewarm coffee and let the silence wrap around me. Not the stifling kind from before, but the good kind, the kind that let me hear myself think. My phone buzzed later that night. First, a text from my mom, hope your trip was nice, maybe we can talk soon. Then another, we miss you. And finally, your dad's been quiet. Alyssa's still upset. Let us know when you're ready. I stared at the messages. Nothing dramatic. No accusations, no guilt-laced lectures. Just soft nudges. Tentative taps on the glass. But I didn't reply. Not right away. The next day, I finally called Tanya. We talked for 3 hours. About Greece, about how free it felt to order food without thinking of anyone else's preferences, about Aloni's lemon cake, and how weird it was to wake up without stress. You sound different, she said. I was quiet for a second. I feel different. And I meant it. Not perfect, not magically healed, but clearer. More mine. I went for walks without AirPods, read paperbacks without checking my phone every 5 minutes, reorganized my bookshelves, deleted apps that no longer served me, even painted my bedroom the soft ocean green I kept bookmarking but never dared to commit to. And then 3 days after I landed, my dad called. I let it go to voicemail, but I listened. His voice was tired. Older, somehow. Hey, Rach, I'm not great at this, you know that. But your mom's been quiet and Alyssa's Alyssa. I just want you to know we've been thinking about what you said. Maybe we didn't get it before, but I think I'm starting to. He paused. Then, you're not who you were. And maybe that's a good thing. I sat with that. You're not who you were. It didn't feel like an insult. Not anymore. It felt like recognition. Like maybe, just maybe, someone had finally seen me. The me behind the spreadsheet. Behind the, no worries, I got it, smile. But even recognition didn't mean reconciliation. That would take more than a voicemail. So I didn't call back. Instead, I texted, I'm home, I'm okay, I need space. I'll reach out when I'm ready. It was the most honest thing I'd sent them in years. And something unexpected happened. They respected it. No follow-up calls, no surprise visits, just space. Space to grow, to breathe, to rebuild my own sense of worth on a foundation that didn't crumble every time someone else had a need louder than mine. I wasn't the same daughter they left behind at that curb, and I wasn't going back.
Weeks passed. Slowly at first, like my mind was testing whether the peace would last. Then faster, until one morning I realized I hadn't thought about Alyssa or my parents in 2 whole days. Not out of malice, just freedom. It was strange to admit that cutting the emotional cords didn't leave me empty. It made space. Space to wake up without dread. To go a whole Saturday without mentally rehearsing some version of, "It's fine, don't worry about it." Space to say no without guilt. I used that space well. I signed up for a photography class, bought a secondhand camera, and spent Sunday mornings chasing light through old neighborhoods, snapping photos of peeling paint, cracked sidewalks, dandelions blooming through fences. I hiked more, alone. No one complaining about bugs or blisters or needing to pee every mile. I made friends at a poetry reading, dated someone for a while, and let it end without drama. Just 2 people growing in different directions. No fixing, no shrinking myself to fit. I even went back to that old travel spreadsheet, the one filled with notes for my Scotland plans. I didn't delete it. I opened a new tab. This one said, "Just me." My bucket list wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving a point to my family. It was about choosing myself, over and over. One afternoon, I got a letter in the mail from my mom. Handwritten, 3 pages. She didn't grovel, didn't make excuses. She just wrote, "I'm trying to understand. I know I've taken you for granted. If you ever want to talk, I'll listen." And that was something. I haven't responded, not yet. Because here's what no one tells you about healing. It's not about confrontation. It's not even about getting the apology. It's about deciding you're worth more than what someone else is willing to give. I don't know what my relationship with them will look like going forward, but I know what it won't look like. It won't look like me begging to be chosen. It won't look like me doing all the work just to be dismissed. It won't look like erasing myself so someone else can shine. I'm not bitter. I'm done. And peace isn't always quiet. Sometimes peace is sitting in a kitchen lit by string lights, sipping tea you made just the way you like it, with no one to please and no voices in your head asking if you're overreacting. Sometimes peace is walking away and not looking back. I spent years believing love meant sacrifice, that being dependable made me valuable. But being the strong one doesn't mean being their doormat. It means knowing when to stop carrying what was never yours to hold. So, let me ask you, have you ever realized you were holding your entire family together and no one even noticed? If you have, tell me your story in the comments. I see you. And if this resonated with you, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more honest nights like this one. You're not selfish for choosing yourself. You're simply ready to begin.